see that poor market woman who sits crying amidst the many shards? And would you believe that she was once a beautiful princess? No? Well, find out how that came to be. Once upon a time there was a king who had a beautiful daughter, but she was very arrogant and conceited, and no prince was ever good enough for her. One day the king arranged a big party, and he invited all unmarried men to introduce them to his daughter. Kings, dukes, princes, and other noblemen. The princess was presented to the guests, but she always found something to complain about. They were either too fat, or too long, too short, or too pale, or there was something else that did not suit her. The daughter especially made fun of one of the men, a young king, because he had a crooked chin. "Well," she laughed, "he has a chin that looks like the beak of a thrush." From then on, everyone only called him King Thrushbeard. However, when her father saw his daughter mocking people, he became angry and vowed that she would have to marry the first beggar to come to the door. A few days later, a poor musician came to the castle, and the king ordered to meet him. In his dirty, tattered clothes, the man sang for the king and his daughter. When he was finished and asked for a small gift, the king replied, "I liked your singing so much that I give you my daughter in marriage." The king's daughter was shocked, but her father insisted on keeping his oath. He quickly called for the priest, and his daughter had to marry the beggar. Then the king said, "As a beggar's wife, you can no longer live in my castle. Go away from here with your husband." The beggar took the princess by the hand, and together they went out of the castle. After a while they came to a forest. There the princess asked, "Oh, who owns this beautiful forest?" The beggar answered, "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had accepted him, it would be yours." Then the princess moaned, "I, poor maiden tender, oh, if I had only accepted King Thrushbeard." The same thing happened when they came to a meadow, and also to a big city. Everything belonged to King Thrushbeard, and the king's daughter regretted that she had not wanted to marry him. The beggar said, "I do not like that you are always wishing for another husband. Am I not good enough for you?" Finally they came to a small house. The king's daughter asked, "Oh, this house is so small. Who owns this wretched tiny house?" Her husband replied, "This is our house. We will live here together." The house was so small that the king's daughter had to bend over to get in. "Where are the servants?" she asked. "There are no servants," replied the beggar. "You have to do everything yourself. Now light the fire and put some water on to prepare some food. I'm very tired." However, the young woman didn't know how to light a fire or how to cook, and so the beggar had to do it himself. And so it went on for a few days until the supplies were almost used up. The beggar said, "This will not work. We have to make money. From now on, you will weave baskets that I can sell." But when the king's daughter tried to weave with the twigs, she hurt her delicate hands. She couldn't spin either, so the beggar sent her to the market in the city, where she should sell dishes and pots. The king's daughter was afraid that she would be recognized and laughed at out there, but she obeyed because she was hungry. Things went very well at first. People bought the dishes from the princess because they admired her beauty. One day, however, a misfortune happened. As the princess sat with her dishes in a corner of the marketplace, a wild rider ran his horse directly into her market stall, so that everything was shattered into 1,000 shards. The unfortunate princess ran home and told her husband about it. The beggar said, "Stop crying. You're not suited for any decent work. That's why from now on you will work as a kitchen maid in the castle of our king. They will give you something to eat for that." So the beautiful princess became a maid in the castle kitchen. She had to help the cook and do a lot of unpleasant work. In return, she could bring home leftovers for her and her husband to eat every night. One day, the wedding of the eldest son of the king was to be celebrated in the castle. The young woman went to the ballroom and admired how magnificent and wonderful everything was. She thought of her own destiny and regretted her pride and arrogance, which had plunged her into great poverty. Delicious meals were carried in and out of the ballroom. The servants threw a few leftovers to the young woman, who put them in her pockets to bring home. Suddenly, the king's son entered the hall. He wore magnificent clothes and golden chains. As he spotted the beautiful young woman by the doors to the hall, he approached her, took her hand, and wanted to dance with her. She became frightened and refused, for it was King Thrushbeard, whom she had made fun of. But the king's son drew her into the hall to dance with her. Then the ribbon around her pockets tore, and all the food inside fell to the floor. The other guests began to laugh, and the young woman felt terribly ashamed. She ran out of the hall, but King Thrushbeard caught up with her on the stairs and kindly said to her, "Don't be afraid. I was the musician who lived with you in the tiny house. And I was also the wild rider who broke your pots. I did that to punish you for your pride and your arrogance, with which you mocked me." The princess wept bitterly and said, "I was so unfair, and I'm not worthy to be your wife." The king replied, "Calm down. The bad days are over. Now we shall celebrate our wedding." Then the chambermaids came and dressed her in the most magnificent clothes. And her father, the old king, also came with his court and gave his best wishes on her wedding to King Thrushbeard. She was happy, and had a beautiful life. Now you know the story of King Thrushbeard. But did you also find our little elf?